And so I have this baby, and I have to quit my job because he was an early baby. So Stephen and I decided to have the kids. We have Sienna. I have PTSD so bad.
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier. So
after Sienna's birth,
with all of that learning you were doing,
oh, it was awful.
And then you have, and it's such a shame for me to hear because my wife's a doula, and I've become really
aware of birth trauma?
Yeah, and birthing full stop, and what a beautiful, wonderful, gifting thing it is. And previously I'd only have like most people, not just men, I think like a lot of people, you just think, oh my God, gonna have a baby, it's gonna kill, it's gonna be horrible, I'm gonna have to get epidural.
Oh, it doesn't have to be like that.
No, and I've learned a lot through my wife. So to know that you kind of had the foresight amongst all that chaos and all that madness to want to bring a child into the world as kind of naturally and as presently and as consciously as you could.
Yeah. I planned on home birthing my first baby. I did not get to do that.
No.
And I had a midwife, unfortunately, that bullied me into going to hospital because I was strep B positive.
Right.
And if you know anything about strep B positive baby, a healthy full-term baby is the odds of that baby is 1 in 1,000, which is nothing. That's considered extremely low risk for Down syndrome. But because strep B is a fast killer, they take it more seriously.
Of course.
But the problem with that is people don't really understand strep B. Just because you have it one day doesn't mean you have it the next.
So explain to people. It's
transient.
Yeah.
It's a transient bacteria that lives on your skin. If a baby contracts it, it will kill them quickly. But if it's on the baby or on you, it doesn't cause any harm. And it comes and goes. It's a normal thing that lives all over. And I got diagnosed with it. So the hospital policy right now and standard policy right now in Lincolnshire, and it has been this way for a very long time, is that you have to have 2 doses of IV antibiotics before the baby is born to try and prevent the baby from getting strep B and becoming a strep B positive baby. The problem with that is that a healthy full-term pregnancy risk is very low. Pumping yourself full of antibiotics pre-birth automatically wipes you and your kid's immune system out, which is awful. I didn't want a hospital birth to begin with. I didn't want medical intervention to begin with. And then I did a really deaf thing, and I was lounging days before labor, leaning right back, and I watched my perfectly positioned baby flip back to back. And I had a back-to-back labor that went on and on and on for 4 whole days. I went into the hospital on Thursday night is when I went into labor. And then they sent me home and I went back Friday night. And they kept me in because it was a foot of snow outside and I had to have these antibiotics. So I'm in there, I'm waiting. Like 2 days later, and I'm still contracting. Awful back-to-back contractions as well, like the worst of the worst.
Oh, God.
Every 3 minutes, the entire 3 days. And I think that it's like Saturday night, late, almost Sunday, and my friend's like, oh, I bet you're going to have her on Monday. And I was like, I want to throat punch you. Why would you say that? Tomorrow's Sunday. Why do you want me to go through a whole nother day of this? And then it's all day Sunday. Have you had her yet? Who takes this long to have a baby? No one takes this long to have a baby. I'm like, dear Lord, midwife, why am I taking so long to have a baby? And then Monday rolls around and I got this beautiful doctor, beautiful, beautiful lady. And she says, look, I want to try something, but you have to have an epidural to do it. You have to agree to an epidural or I cannot do it. I want to reach inside and turn your baby 180 degrees.
Wow, fuck. That's mad.
I'm like, okay, you're crackers. I was like, okay, let's try it. I'm done. I'm exhausted. They haven't let me eat in 4 days. I haven't slept in 4 days. I've had nothing but water. They won't even let me have juice in case I need to be operated on. So no food for 4 days. You have no strength to have a baby after no food for 4 days.
That's a deep, dark. Yeah, my wife's just recently been in part of a labour with the COVID rules and everything, and a girl had a similar, she's been contracting for about 4 days, and just the difficulty.
You're so hungry and you're so delusional by that point that you just need it to stop everything. So they give me this epidural and I'm like, wow, that's a relief. I can't feel anything.
Is Stephen around? Is Stephen with you?
Oh, Steve's with me through the whole thing. And he is
amazing.
A deer in headlights. Like, I don't know what to do. And I won't let him go anywhere. So for 4 days, he just keeps putting on aftershave so that he doesn't smell of sweat because I won't actually let him leave. Because every time he tries to walk out the door, I'm like, don't go, I'm contracting again.
Get away from me. Come back. Get away. Don't
That
touch
is
me. Come back.
exactly what I did through the entire labor. And I must have had 40 baths and walked back and forth. Bath, no bath, bath, no bath. And he kept putting this aftershave on and I'm trying to like hug him and pull him in. I'm like, you stink. You smell of so much aftershave. I don't... Like, it's so gross, but I'm struggling. And it was a huge battle. And this little lady, she finally reaches in there, turns this baby. I see all these legs flop over, flop around, and she pulls her hand out and jumps up and down. And she goes, it worked. And then she goes, oh, I'm so sorry, y'all. She's like, that never works, but it worked. You're going to have a baby really soon. She's small. She'll be right out. I'm off work now. I've been waiting to see what I could do with you. And it's shift change. So she leaves.
Wow, that's like, a weird exchange then. So she kind of does that with you, which is about as intimate.
Just literally like.
Yeah.
And I could feel her grab the baby's head and I could feel it just turn around. All the legs, everything kind of swept across my whole body.
Wow.
It was perfect and amazing. And then after that happened, I was I couldn't feel anything anyway because of the epidural. But I could tell I was far more comfortable. The baby was in the correct position. Yeah. And I was no longer in the really tense pains that I was having. She leaves, and the next 3 hours go to absolute toffee. So after she moved the baby gets destats. Typical, you just turned her. Nobody reached in there before. Of course she's going to desat. So I don't agree with their treatment plan. And they send in the consultant. And this consultant barges in and he's yelling at my midwives, get that monitor on her. Why isn't the monitor on correctly? And it's because I'm moving, because I don't want to be tied down. And these girls are getting yelled at. A midwife and a training midwife are now crying in my room while I'm trying to deliver a baby.
That's some mad excess trauma then to deal with.
This guy comes in and he proceeds to watch these desats, not be comfortable with it, and decide that he is going to take me for a C-section. I'm like, no, you're not.
You told him?
I was like, no, you're not. Oh, yeah, I told him. And then he fought with me. And I'm literally in the middle of delivery. I'm having contractions and I'm fully dilated and I'm literally trying to push the baby out. And Steve's like, oh, I can see her head. And this idiot is trying to argue with me about using forceps and having a C-section, even though my baby is coming out. And I'm like, she doesn't need anything. I'm like, why is he in here? Why are you crying? Why are all these people in here? I thought you were delivering my baby. Like, why is he here? And this man proceeds to bully me until I agree to use ventouse, which I was not happy about. I did not want any intervention to begin with. The desats were minimal, and I know this because I actually purchased all of my medical notes and filed a lawsuit after the birth that I never went through with.
Right.
And then he bullied me and bullied me and bullied me. He convinced me to get ventouse, but in the medical world, I'm sure you'll be aware, any decision that gets made is supposed to be made with informed consent.
Exactly.
So I had no idea what ventouse was. I had to ask. He told me it was a suction cup that went on the baby's head. He did not tell me he needed an entire tray of sharp tools. These tools come in, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm going to give you a episiotomy. I said, you're not giving me an episiotomy. Why? Oh, I can't use ventouse if I don't. Well, then you should have told me that. Don't you dare. Well, you're tearing. Yes, I know. That's what happens when you shit out a baby. Love. Do not cut me. And then she comes out, luckily, without ventouse or anything else. Even though in my notes it says ventouse. He basically nearly got it on her, and she came out anyway. She comes out. She's supposed to go straight onto my stomach. Doesn't read my birth notes. Takes my baby. Doesn't put her on my stomach. And then I'm screaming at him, do not cut the cord. Don't cut the cord. He looks right at me, laughs, cuts the cord.
Laughs?
And says, oops, I already have.
Whoa.
And walks away with my baby. At this point, I'm screaming, give me my baby now.
That's...
freaking out. No one will tell me anything.
So what
he
was
took my baby.
Why was he so stressing?
And they took her to a table to be checked over because she supposedly had meconium pooped in the womb on the way out. So they're checking over the baby, and then they take her straight to NICU. And they give this baby an APGAR score of 9. Now, after having a premature baby, I know damn well that no baby with an APGAR score of 9 needs to go to the NICU for any reason. Then they won't let me see my baby for 5 hours. So they stole my baby. They won't let me see her. They refuse to let her have my breast milk that I pre-expressed before birth, because I left it in the car. Even though it was frozen because it was a foot of snow outside. They could not possibly use any logic and let my child have my milk as her first milk. They wouldn't let me breastfeed her. They wouldn't bring me a breast pump. And I'm still laid open on a table and can't move because they lost a towel. And they're counting these towels over and over again for 5 hours. And then they finally stitch me up. And I find out that he gave me an episiotomy against my will, without my consent. And I have to be sewn up quite badly. And that was awful.
Jesus fucking Christ, man.
Oh, yeah, he came back before they sewed me up, actually, to check for the placenta. And I had been told my placenta came out whole repeatedly, and he still felt the need to reach inside and check for my placenta, which, from my understanding, is just beyond inappropriate. And if it came out whole, and there's no reason to go looking for it, and if it didn't come out whole, you wouldn't go looking for it like that. You would go straight to theater because you can bleed out.
So what was the bad step with this gentleman then? Was he having a bad day? Is this guy
clock
did he have
watching
a reputation or anything? Or?
Yes, he had a reputation. He was clock watching. He wanted that baby out so he could get on to the next patient. And I met a midwife at my allotment who also had an allotment, who wasn't my midwife, but I was informed 2 years later that he's never going to deliver a baby again. He's been forced out of the hospital and had his license removed.
Wow.